Imagine waking up one morning to find out that America, China, Russia, the EU, India, all of them had collapsed. Overnight, gone. No governments, no trade, no written language, cities abandoned, ports burned, palaces left empty, never to be inhabited again. You'd call that impossible. But it already happened. 3,200 years ago, in just 50 years, every major civilization on Earth collapsed at the same time. The Hittites, the Mycenaeans, the Minoans, the Babylonians, the Cypriots, gone. And to this day, we don't fully know why. To understand how everything fell apart, you first need to understand how extraordinary the world was before it happened. By 1300 BC, the Mediterranean wasn't a collection of isolated tribes scratching at the dirt. It was a fully globalized world. We're talking about an area stretching from Italy in the west, all the way to Afghanistan in the east, from Turkey in the north, down to Egypt in the south, completely interconnected. The Egyptians traded gold and grain. The Hittites supplied silver and iron. The Mycenaeans exported wine and olive oil. Cyprus dominated copper production. Mesopotamia sent textiles and tin. These weren't just neighbors, they were partners. Royal families wrote letters to each other. Merchants sailed thousands of miles. Luxury goods from Afghanistan appeared in Egyptian tombs. We know this because of one extraordinary discovery. The Uluburun shipwreck, found off the coast of Turkey, dating to around 1320 BC. Its cargo told a story no ancient writer could. Gold jewelry, carved ivory, copper ingots, tin, glass, ebony, olive oil, and weapons, all from at least 7 different civilizations, on one single ship. This was the Bronze Age at its peak. Wealthy, connected, confident, and then it all ended. Between 1225 and 1150 BC, in less than a human lifetime, it all came apart. The Hittite Empire, which had rivaled Egypt for centuries and fought them to a standstill at the Battle of Kadesh, wiped out. Their capital, Hattusa, burned to the ground and abandoned, never reoccupied. Mycenae, the civilization that inspired Homer's Iliad, the warriors who fought at Troy, collapsed so completely that the Greeks of just 400 years later had no memory it had ever existed. They thought the ruins in their own land were built by giants. Ugarit, one of the greatest port cities in the ancient world, home to one of the first alphabets ever created, destroyed around 1185 BC. Archaeologists found a tablet in the ruins, still in the kiln, never sent. A desperate message from the king of Ugarit to the king of Cyprus. My father, the enemy's ships came. They set fire to my cities and devastated the land. He never got a reply. Within decades, trade collapsed. Written languages disappeared. Populations plummeted. Entire cities were abandoned and never rebuilt. The survivors called it simply the catastrophe. For over a century, historians have argued about what caused this, and the truth is, no single explanation has ever been enough. Because what happened wasn't one disaster. It was a perfect storm. Let's look at the suspects. The most dramatic explanation, and the oldest one, points to a mysterious group of raiders known only as the Sea Peoples. We know about them almost entirely from one source: the Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses III, who claimed to have defeated them in a great naval battle around 1177 BC. He had the entire battle carved in stone at his temple at Medinet Habu. But here's the problem. That account was essentially Egyptian propaganda, Ramesses celebrating himself. As one archaeologist put it, using Ramesses' account as historical fact is like using Putin's account of the Ukraine war as the definitive record. We still don't know who the Sea Peoples were. where they came from, or whether they caused the collapse, or whether they were fleeing a collapse that was already happening elsewhere. In 2014, researchers analyzed sediment cores from the Sea of Galilee. What they found was striking. Between 1250 and 1100 BC, the Eastern Mediterranean experienced the most severe drought of the entire Bronze Age, a megadrought that lasted potentially 150 to 300 years in some regions. Then, in 2023, scientists at Cornell University studied the rings of ancient juniper trees preserved in the ruins of the Hittite capital. The findings were brutal. The years 1198 to 1196 BC were among the driest the region had experienced in over 600 years. 3 consecutive years of almost total crop failure. As the lead researcher put it, if we were told our supermarkets would be closed for 3 years, we'd all be panicking. No food means no stability. No stability means no empire. Historian Eric Cline, working with geophysicist Amos Nuhr, uncovered something extraordinary. In the 50-year window from 1225 to 1175 BC, the Mediterranean was hit by a rapid series of massive earthquakes, what they called an earthquake storm. City after city shows evidence of severe seismic destruction at exactly this time. Mycenae, Tiryns, Megiddo, Ugarit. The timing was not coincidental. Here's where it gets unsettling, and where it starts to sound uncomfortably familiar. A 2025 study by researchers at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers examined the Bronze Age collapse using modern network analysis. Their conclusion? The very thing that made these civilizations strong is what made them fragile. Their trade networks were so deeply interconnected that when one node failed, one city destroyed, one trade route disrupted, one harvest failing, the crisis spread instantly to everyone else. Bronze itself required 2 metals, copper and tin. Copper came mainly from Cyprus. Tin came from as far as Afghanistan. If either supply chain broke, even briefly, armies couldn't be equipped. Palaces couldn't function. The whole system froze. It wasn't just a drought. It wasn't just the sea peoples. It was drought triggering famine, triggering migration, triggering raids, triggering the collapse of trade, all happening simultaneously with no time to recover. As historian Eric Cline put it, any one of these catastrophes alone probably wasn't enough to bring down a civilization. But when you get 3 or 4 hitting in quick succession, that's when you get a perfect storm. What came after was called the Bronze Age Dark Ages, and it deserves that name. For the next 400 years, the Mediterranean went silent. Writing disappeared in Greece entirely. The Mycenaean script, Linear B, was completely forgotten. When the Greeks reinvented writing centuries later, they had to borrow an entirely new alphabet from the Phoenicians. Trade collapsed to a fraction of what it had been. Populations fell dramatically. Cities shrank into villages. The Hittites, gone forever. The Minoans, gone. Mycenae, gone. Even Egypt, which survived, was never the same again. The New Kingdom, the era of Ramesses the Great, of Tutankhamun, of Cleopatra's distant ancestors, effectively ended. Egypt retreated into itself. The world that emerged 4 centuries later, the world of classical Greece, of the early Roman Republic, of the biblical kingdoms, had almost no memory that the civilization before it had ever existed. They looked at the ruins around them and assumed they'd been built by heroes, by gods, by giants. Here's the question that keeps historians and even military researchers up at night. Could it happen again? The same 2025 Army Corps of Engineers study that analyzed the Bronze Age collapse noted something uncomfortable. Our modern global networks are more complex and interconnected than the Bronze Age ever was. We depend on global supply chains for food, medicine, microchips, energy. A disruption in one region, a pandemic, a war, a climate shock, ripples everywhere instantly. The Bronze Age wasn't a primitive world. It was our world, 3,000 years earlier. A globalized economy, sophisticated governments, long-range trade, complex military alliances, and in 50 years, barely a human lifetime, it was gone. The scariest part? The people living through it probably didn't know what was happening. They weren't watching civilizations fall. They were just trying to survive the drought, the next raid, the next earthquake. By the time they understood the scale of what was happening, there was nothing left to save. The Bronze Age collapse remains one of the greatest mysteries in human history. Not because we have no answers, but because every answer raises more questions. Who were the Sea Peoples, really? Could one society have survived if they'd acted differently? And most unsettling of all, are we more like the Bronze Age than we'd like to think? If you want to go deeper on this, Cline's book, 1177 BC, The Year Civilization Collapsed, is the definitive read. Leave your own theory in the comments. I want to know what you think brought the ancient world to its knees. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Because next week, we're going inside the civilization that quietly outlasted them all.